All right, taking this opportunity to do another unboxing video of an old game that this came out in 1982 from Phoenix Enterprises, and I was in Gettysburg. I posted a bunch of videos about that a little over a month ago, back in second week of June, and of course that got me interested in looking at Gettysburg games. I have a ton of Gettysburg games already. You can, if you've ever seen my Gettysburg maps videos, I think I did multiple videos. I have so many, so many Gettysburg games, but I didn't have this one, and this is one that's got fairly, for how old it is, still has fairly decent reviews on Board Game Geek. It's, I guess, called the reviews probably mediocre. A lot of people have problems with the map, but it's an old game, old production quality, limited colors and that sort of thing. But it's got this painting on the cover. I don't know who did this painting. It looks like it might actually be a painting from some other source that was not just commissioned for this game, but who knows? No idea. But it's just, I kind of like the cover, this font, and I'm sure there's a name for whatever this kind of very artistic looking font is that they used here. But I don't know, I kind of like it. It's something about it adds to my enjoyment of the cover and gives it an old-timey, this is definitely like an old-timey type of font. Makes me think of signs in the Old West or something, but not necessarily like Civil War related exactly, more like Old West related, but nonetheless, I don't know, it works for this particular game. And it's, I don't know if this is supposed to be, this must be like on the first day, because that's like clearly the seminary in the background, and from this angle, this would be like the Chambersburg pike that the Confederates are attacking along. And I think these are cavalrymen, that are laying in the road. So it's a view of the first day. It's an interesting view, one you don't see all that often. Of course, this puts you in the role of the Confederates, which in this era, early '80s. That was sort of the dawn of more modern Civil War scholarship. Started to happen in the '80s, but otherwise the country was still very much in the lost cause grip, the romanticized Confederate view of the Civil War. So putting yourself in the game, assuming you're in the role of the Confederates, is really how most Civil War games were. People were more interested in Lee and the Confederates and underdogs and the lost cause myth and all that stuff. So that's how the marketing of these types of games went, focused on the rebels. Nothing on the back. This is also of an era where the backs of boxes didn't always have stuff on them. Think of a lot of the older SPI titles, for example. But it is a thin flat box. It does have some, like, setting the stage, in lieu of a box back, they put a description on the side of the box. Wow, for 2 to 6 players, that's interesting. Trying to think what 6 players would have to do in this, like putting each one in charge of a core or something. Who knows? This die is interesting. It looks like a game science die, but it's of the era when the dice, when you'd have to color in the numbers on your own, using a crayon or like a pen or something like that, to ink the numbers in, but it's got the sharp edges like a game science die. It's got a rule book and something stuck in there. Errata. Yes, the era, this is, well before the internet, so the only way you're getting errata is if the company prints it and mails it out to people, or figures it out before they even ship the game and sticks it in the box with the published game. It's the era in which the only way you could get fixes was this. So you got a single sheet of errata. Looks like they had some diagrams that were a little messed up in the rules, but this was actually stuck in the rule book. And I bought this copy from Noble Knight. Not that they're sponsoring this video or anything, but they're usually pretty good at, making sure that all the stuff that the game needs is in there and providing notes describing any condition of the game that doesn't, that lowers its status from, mint, near mint, very good, fair, and so on. So I think this was about $30 for a unpunched copy. But anyway, not a particularly long rule book. It's 3 columns, SPI style. Kind of looks like an SPI rule book. But we are looking at, and there's your replaced artillery field of fire. I guess they just wanted to make sure that the actual counter was in there so you could see how the counter should be positioned in the hex to get that field of fire. And some historical notes on the last page. Who was the designer for this? Peter Bertram. I'm not sure what else Peter Bertram has done, and I'm not familiar with Phoenix Enterprises, like what other games Phoenix Enterprises actually had, if any. So, how many pages? Oh, the pages aren't numbered. But that's probably about 12 pages of rules, maybe. So it's not a heavy game, and I got it just to have another light treatment of Gettysburg, and I'm always interested in Gettysburg games, so this is one that I knew about and had just never pulled the trigger on because it was not particularly exceptional in any way, not some cult classic favorite or anything. It kind of disappeared into the mists of time, and so many Gettysburg games out there. If it's not going to stand out, it's going to kind of disappear. But it is, it's not an Avalon Hill title. It's not an SPI title. It's, and those were your 2 biggest war game publishers back in this era. Well, by 82, SPI was TSR, or had been bought by TSR, but those were your 2 big war game publishers of that era. There was other smaller companies, obviously Phoenix Enterprises would be one of them. But if it wasn't coming through S&T magazine or Terrible Swift Sword or something from SPI, or the TSR reprint, or things like Bull Run or Devil's Den, or Assorted, or Victor Games The Civil War, although it's not a Gettysburg specific game. But anyway, finding old games from other publishers besides SPI or Avalon Hill is sometimes a challenge, and sometimes there's a reason that they were not that this publishers didn't go on to great success, or weren't around for a long time. But this one has sort of persisted out there as an older Gettysburg game that I think it's brigade level. So here's the combat charts, combat related tables. These are both identical, but your CRT, strength points firing versus die roll, that's your D10. Fire strength formations, get infantry in line, infantry in column, may not attack in any way. That tracks. Unlimbered artillery has different, it's only halved versus infantry in line and dismounted cavalry, unless targets adjacent, in which case they'd be using canister. And then your range is going to affect your fire strength, so all that seems pretty common for games of this era. And a line of sight table. Now this I'd want to look at more closely, because line of sight's always one of those things that every game has its own way of describing line of sight. Some games make it almost impossible to figure out, and others make it very simple to figure out. And a sort of cross-reference chart like this might be a good way to figure it out. Again, I don't want to try and study it and figure out whether this is a good or bad way to do this on camera, but just the fact that there's a chart like this is pretty rare and pretty interesting to me. So anyway, 2 of those. This is your turn record and reinforcements. It's a fold over card, and this has both the Union and Confederate reinforcement schedule on it and turn track. Here you're doing classic for Gettysburg, you're tracking days and hours, and then you'll be bringing in your reinforcements accordingly. Gettysburg is, especially if you're starting on the first day, is very much a game about reinforcements showing up at specific times. Got our counter sheet. This is classic early 80s die cutting. These look at least functionally centered. Some of them are drifting a little to one side or the other, but otherwise pretty standard for this era. Kind of a semi-glossy finish on these. Here's the actual units. And the leader counters actually remind me a little bit of the great campaigns of the American Civil War counters, where it's just a simple light blue or gray, maybe it's butternut now, that they use for the Confederates in the GCACW series. But the die cutting on these is considerably worse. As you can see, the numbers are right at the point of the cut in some cases, or the silhouettes are in some cases drifting even through the cuts. So, this is just par for the course in this era. You can see here those numbers are also drifting to the edges of the counters in terms of where the die cutting is. But yeah, very much, hand-drawn type of artwork on these counters. Die cutting, questionable at best, centering and so forth of the graphics. And I've looked through this already, so that's why I know what we're going to see here on the back is stuff that's just literally off the edge of the back is usually, on these older games, is usually where a lot of the worst offenses will be. But here, like the HA and part of the cannon is just completely cut off of the counter there. So you can't even see that. You won't even be able to see the HA once these are punched out on the reverse of those. So I'm guessing, is HA presumably heavy artillery? I don't know. I don't know what heavy artillery would be at the Battle of Gettysburg, because it's not like they had mortar guns or something there. So I'm not sure what the deal is there. But yeah, these are so badly centered here that no idea how. I think most of the numbers will be okay, but regardless, that's the condition of those. And then last but not least, we've got the map, and this is on sort of a heavy cardstock. But on this has sort of people that like it, and I think most people don't like it. That's a lot of the complaints I saw on Board Game Geek talked about the map. But it's got your terrain effects, casualty record, sequence of play on it. So those are all nice. It's a place to put limited units. But I like when they have counters on there. Nice to have the sequence of play on the map. But artwork-wise, it's not terrible. There's sort of little hand-drawn buildings and stuff there. And in terms of actual, naming the points of interest on the historical battlefield, most of it appears to be, pretty accurate looking map, and it's got a lot of the farms. It's got the little, landmarks and things. There's the gate at the cemetery. You got the seminary there. Specific artwork for the specific landmarks, which, a lot of modern Gettysburg maps don't have. They don't have an image of what the actual seminary looked like
on the map, or what the actual cemetery gate looked like on the map. Now, the farms are probably just generic buildings, but even those, they try and make a different looking building kind of for each of the farms, different little bits of character. So I happen to really like that, where they've taken specific images, and drawn specific things for some of the specific to Gettysburg, a mill. It actually looks like a little mill there. So just, that kind of stuff is cool, I think. The forest, the trees, pretty simplistic little drawing of trees there. But, it's clear where your points of elevation are, where your ridges are, your ridge lines. I don't know if there's rules in this that address the ridge lines or not. That'll be interesting to see. But, as maps go, it's not particularly colorful, but there's enough color there, and the colors are good. The blue for the water, green for the woods, brown for your elevation changes and ridges. Simple, readable, functional. Roads are clear. Trails are clear. I don't know. I like it. And the heavy cardstock is kind of nice. I'll probably backfold it and probably play on, I won't use plexi on this, and probably use, since it's all one sheet, I enjoy the texture of the thicker paper. So kind of looking forward to trying it out and seeing how it plays. It is interesting. Oh, I didn't point this out, but it is interesting that the Confederates are yellow on here. The leaders are gray. It's fine having different colors, for the leaders and the actual counters, but the Union, first of all, is like this bright blue. And, this is obviously for readability, because if the Union were like the navy or dark blue of, actual Union uniforms, then they'd be using white ink to have to print on there. And so this way, the whole thing can be printed with black ink for your images and your words and numbers. And then you just change your backgrounds, so you're not having to. But in order to have black be readable, you have to have this bright color of blue. This not quite teal, but it's a electric blue Union units, and then these yellow, which obviously they wanted to go for a butternut, but same reason. If these were brown, you wouldn't be able to read the numbers and see the images very well. And so, but they couldn't have them be this gray color because they'd already done that for the leaders and the reserve artillery and stuff. So I can see why they chose some slightly weird colors there, just based on the ink. And again, these were just limitations in terms of ink colors and printing at the time in 1982. So anyway, I do look forward to giving this a try and seeing if it is just a mediocre treatment of Gettysburg or if it brings anything interesting to the table. Like I said, in my opinion, the most interesting thing and kind of the coolest thing is the map, really, with all the little farms and stuff called out on them. Some maps do this, a lot of maps don't, and some of them do it with better regularity. Like this really covers like every farm, and you got the Black Horse Tavern over here. Like it's got all of the main. Because the Thompson House there, that was Lee's headquarters, if I recall. So it's like, it's really got like every farm, especially down here with the Rose Farm, they're near the wheat field, and, the Weichert, the Trossel Barn, that was Sickles' headquarters. They didn't, this is the Bushman Farm, I believe, here. No. Yeah, maybe? No, because there's Warfield Ridge. That was where the Confederates launched their attack. So the Snyder Farm, Flaherty. I thought the Bushman Farm would be right along here. So I'm actually not sure, or if that is in fact it, because there's Plum Run. Because the Confederates would have come, the Alabamians would have come there to go around. Like they went up to the top of the Big Round Top and then attacked Little Round Top. So maybe that is the Bushman Farm. Because I don't otherwise see it on here, but that was a main farm near where Longstreet launched his attack. But anyway, just seeing all of the landmarks so clearly labeled on here with these neat little drawings is just a rare instance on Gettysburg maps, particularly for one that's, again, I think at the brigade level. If that even, I mean, there's not a lot of counters. Just looking to see. Yeah, might actually be divisional. No, I think, yeah, each counter is a brigade. Okay, so, yeah. So anyway, yeah, at this scale to see, I don't know, this level of kind of charming detail on a Gettysburg map is pretty cool. So this one would definitely be in my notable Gettysburg map file as opposed to forgettable Gettysburg map file. People might say for the colors and stuff, it's kind of forgettable, but in terms of, I think, the detail, it's very good. So anyway, that's just a look inside the box at Gettysburg, High Tide of the Confederacy.